All right, another episode of the Cedric Maxwell podcast, in person this time. I am Joe Tsai, Cedric Maxwell's here, and a special guest, Bobby Manning. Bobby, this is a special appearance for you, man, because we haven't done this since, 2020? We haven't done a podcast in person in a few years, it feels like. And with everything going on in the NBA, with everything going on in Brooklyn, we thought it was appropriate to have a sit-down conversation this time. And just talk it out, right? Talk it out. I mean, Max and I, we were talking briefly before the Celtics game Wednesday night, and we decided that this is the best way to go about it. So, Bobby, I mean, we can just get started by what's going on in Brooklyn. Obviously, the Kyrie suspension. He was suspended for at least 5 games. He had a list of things he needed to do in order to return to the team. But now it just seems like the Brooklyn Nets may be moving on without him. And of course, they got a lot to decide, or the last week or so with the whole Ime situation. We'll get into that in a little bit, but first things first, what's your takeaway with this whole Kyrie situation? I know we always talk Celtics on camera. We rarely talk about this topic, so I'm intrigued as to what you think. But what happens with Kyrie in Brooklyn? How does this whole thing play out in your opinion?
It felt to me from the moment they passed this down that this could be the end of his time in Brooklyn. I don't expect him to play for the Nets again. I'd be stunned. It just seemed like such a mass of redemption activities, whatever you want to call it, from the get back out there, that he wasn't going to be able to accomplish this in much less than 5 games. How about the rest of the season here? Not to mention the rift it clearly drew between him and the team here. I can't imagine he's thrilled with this, considering the fact that through his responses, he went in front of the media twice. Sean Marks called it a bit of a fuss. I don't think there was a sense initially from Kyrie and the team that this was a huge deal or something that they had to address. And I think the backlash got to a point where they had to do something from a public relations standpoint to cover themselves as a team and come out and say, we're against this. We're going to make him go out there and address the things that he said and try to redeem himself. So I can't imagine that he's going to be able to do all these things and get back on the floor in a timely manner. And that, to me, says that they're done with him.
I'm thinking it's because he had a chance to explain himself and he didn't. He had a chance to apologize, and they didn't like his version of the apology.
Well, you know what? Let's stop right now. Because he did apologize.
When did he apologize?
But they did not. No. Even that before. But they did not like his apology. And I think the thing that happened was Kyrie was apologizing, but at the same time he was fighting back. And that's the worst thing you can do in any conversation. If you start out by saying you're sorry and you stop there and walk away, you're good. But if you go with the next but, then that takes everything that you just said and puts it on hold to the people you're apologizing to. I think that's one of the big things right now with Kyrie Irving. And I think that Kyrie is, he wants to be the smartest guy in the room.
Well, none of us have watched this, right? I mean, none of us shelled out $12. And
to who has? I'd like to see the percentage of people who have watched it.
I went through the reviews yesterday. It drags on and on, I guess, 4 hours.
Yeah, those kind of documentaries typically do, right? I mean, it's not...
Something doesn't feel right about watching something that's quoting Hitler. It's best to just stay away from that. But again, you do have to go in and see what was actually said.
Kyrie, let me advise here. Yeah. You are in Brooklyn. And I think that's the last thing you're going to talk about is Jewish people in Brooklyn in a way that might be offensive to them.
Yeah.
Or any place, but especially with you in Brooklyn and your fan base being huge when you think about people in the Jewish community who come to those games.
Yeah, you saw the people protesting along the sideline. I think that was another instance where the team looked at it and said, I don't know if we can have this here. So the apology point's a good one, right? It wasn't unequivocal.
Yeah,
he kind of bounced around and affirmed certain points. He said, I didn't agree with everything in here. There were some things I didn't agree with. And then he, as you said, was combative, saying, I read the dictionary and I know where I come from, so I can't be anti-Semitic.
Where were you? Let me ask you that. Where were you when all these things happened to me?
Oh, when
that's what Kyrie said. Where were you when I was little?
My ancestors and all that.
Where were you? Well, most of those people weren't around because they weren't alive when that happened. So I think that Kyrie might be you're stretching a little bit.
Right.
I just the backlash and the craziness right now. My biggest take out of all this has been, I guess, now the next day, which I think is the next day when I think about the people who are defending Kyrie. and Jay Williams had something on.
I think what Jay was trying to get at is the fact that he's being asked to do too much as ways of saying sorry. And in a way, maybe he's right to a certain extent. But again, my point is, I understand why the organization is saying, look, you didn't do the apology right, so we want you to double down. We want you to do this, that, and the other. Honestly, I think part of it is he's never going to do this, and we're done with him anyway. So let's just put that out there to see if he actually does it.
Yeah, they're delaying the inevitable here.
Exactly.
Like.
Or the other part is they're just saying, look, you botched that apology so bad. We're so disappointed in you that we're going to make you go through this. And I think that's what Jay's getting at, saying like, man, you guys are really making this guy go through it as his way of saying, like, he's pretty much going to, get down on his hands and knees and say, I'm sorry, take me back.
Well, I think you look at also the Ime situation that the Celtics do. We're looking back on that now, the history of that. Did the Celtics do the right thing by suspending Ime and moving forward there? So there's so many things which tie up, and then Brooklyn comes in and says, hold on a minute. Right. Let's throw a lifeline to Ime. Let's dangle around the fact that we might have him as our next coach.
Yeah.
That to me was like, what are you thinking about? You already have a public relation nightmare. And all of a sudden you're going to bring Ime in? I just don't think it was the time, the place, nor did anybody think about that.
They also had a job posting for Nets PR. Did you see that, Bobby?
They need a new public relations, right? Will you take that job, Max?
Who would want to put their foot in that bear trap?
Someone posted it from LinkedIn, and I think it was, oh man, that's funny.
Well, these are the kind of things you have to do as an organization to kind of send that message, right? They want to come off looking strong here. They want to make it look like they had no tolerance for something like this. But at the same time, like a Jay Williams says, or I saw Etan Thomas wrote with this, they don't really believe that like this is coming from an authentic place with the Nets. What I don't like about the critics of the punishment, though, whether it's a Jay or whether it's a Etan, I don't think they've affirmed like the damage that Kyrie potentially did here. Because this comes in a point where we had your guy Ye saying that saying these tropes about Jewish people, and
now Kanye's forever my guy.
The Ye's throwing out those tropes there about Jewish people. That's not what Kyrie did here, but it comes in the footsteps of that. And I can't imagine that there was like those things happen coincidentally weeks apart. Ye's posting those anti-Semitic remarks, Kyrie's posting a documentary that contains anti-Semitic tropes, and it just kind of fails to acknowledge the fact that you have these groups on bridges in LA saying that Kanye was right about the Jews, and you have these anti-Semitic groups outside of a football game. I think it was in Jacksonville, blasting projections of that onto a building. Like, there's a real threat here to the Jewish community that I don't think people are taking seriously. And like, this doesn't have to be like the Olympics of like subjection or whatever you want to call it. Like, listen, Jewish people have a history of these tropes turning into violence against them. And if you just listen to them, like, I think it's very clear that they don't like what's happening here, even though it just is a documentary and it might not be everything that he feels in his heart.
Well, guys, let's move closer to home and let's see what Jaylen Brown has said. And Jaylen in his defense right now, Kyrie.
Yeah.
And something he just said about Nike, and I mean, he's putting.
I'm agreeing with him on this one.
You agreeing with him
on the Nike thing? So Jaylen Brown tweeted out, since when does Nike have morals? What was it? When does it have morals, right? Moral compass.
Ethics. Yeah. Since when does Nike care about ethics?
I mean, if anything, we learned from the former Celtic and Ned's freedom. I mean, whether we're talking about the sweatshops or whether we're talking about their practices, I mean, Jaylen doesn't bring up a good point, right? The whole Nike thing.
Oof, man, I tell you what, when you are putting your mouth to words in this situation, I think it becomes very, very complicated when you start talking about a major organization, a major player in sports, and you step out on that limb. And there are things about Jaylen that I really believe, when he talks about Black Lives Matter and what he did during that time. But man, this one's kind of out there. Yeah. And, to hear the response, because I'm hearing rumblings from a lot of players talking about, well, it's this and it's that and the whole organization and Nike and this and that. But man, Nike has to think that way though. I mean, Nike has to start thinking about a moral compass. Though. Yeah. I mean, you can't. You can't have a player like that.
I'm not saying Nike's making a mistake here. I'm saying like Jaylen brings up a good point in saying like, since when do you guys care about that?
Well, wait a minute. First of all, I think about what you talk about. We're going too far, and we talk about maybe what Kyrie has said before. Think about it. Kyrie was on the payroll there with Nike, and Nike made a prototype shoe for him, and he said, "This shoe is trash. It's garbage. Don't wear it."
Yeah.
Who says that kind of stuff? When the team, you can't go in and do, that. Those are kind of things. I'm like, well, Kyrie, that's kind of out there. Do you know how many millions of dollars they put to put that shoe together?
Well, who knows better about what Kyrie's antics encompass than us here in Boston, right? Like, this is the thing. This didn't happen in a vacuum, and this isn't something that the Nets are looking at and saying this one incident is going to tear apart a relationship. Look at what happened 1 year ago. He didn't show up to the team because of a vaccine mandate. And that's his right, but it's also, if you're going to be focused on basketball, which this organization keeps talking about, at some point you have to wonder whether your star is dedicated to basketball, because 1 year it's the vaccine thing and he can't show up because of that. Now all of a sudden he's drowned himself in controversy over anti-Semitism.
Well, you know what? How about this? They always have this line right now where they start out, the NBA cares. Hello, somebody. The NBA cares, and you got Kyrie using that line, one of your main players. That it is about public relations now with organizations. It used to be one time all about basketball.
Right.
Red Auerbach, hey, what happens on the floor? There were no dancers, none of that, no entertainment, nothing like. But it's bigger than that. The Celtics have, do a lot of things in the community now, and the whole NBA. Every team in the NBA has something that they're affiliated with, which is a charity. So all of a sudden, you get to this. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Holier than thou, or the backlash, or whatever it might be. That to me can be so confusing and devastating when you think about those words. The NBA cares. That was the slogan that you saw of the NBA, and it didn't hurt at all when you think about your commissioner being Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you wonder what the backdrop to that is. Like, it's a tough situation for everybody involved, because like you said at the very beginning, he didn't say any of the things that were in the film. He shared it. He said, I don't agree with everything in there. And from, to go back to Jaylen's points and the things he's talked about so far, them as a union, I think they're within their rights to say, he didn't say any of this stuff. You're going to punish him in an unprecedented way? Mm-hmm. All right. But if you're Jaylen, the person, the individual, and you're saying, what about Nike? And some people are saying, what about Brett Favre? And what about this? And how about some accountability, right? For what he said and what he did here? Like, it's always got to be, what about this and what about that, and compare it to this and compare it to that.
Which is what I feel like he did during the media session when he was like, talking about his ancestors. It's like, okay, that doesn't mean you're wrong.
It's deflection.
We're talking about this though.
It's seriously what it is. It's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
You can't compare one to the other.
Uh-huh.
And when you start doing that, then now you're going to get yourself into a whole nother thing, because things aren't always the same regardless.
But I think most people are under the impression that he's not anti-Semitic. It's just the explaining part and getting down to what compelled him to post it. And if he wants to, what did you take away from the documentary? I would like to know that, right?
Remember why he said he's not anti-Semitic though? Like, and he did say he loves everybody, he cares about everybody, but it was because of the definition of Semitic in the dictionary. Like, you can't just come out and say, I love Jewish people.
I've read the dictionary.
They need to be protected at all costs. I don't stand for any anti-Semitism against anti-Jewish. You could have used that word instead. Instead, it's, I'm Semitic, so I can't be Semitic because of what Semitic says in the dictionary. Like, that's just him trying to sound smarter than everybody.
But didn't they have that one time? You remember that line people used to use all the time, said, zip it.
Yes.
Kyrie, zip it. And for me, I'm telling you this way, and here again, I'm not trying to make fun of this, but sometimes it is about money. It's about dollars and cents. And if you're Kyrie Irving, you're talking about $250 million, which he was about to sign a new contract.
Yeah. Stunning that he didn't.
And you know, and the thing that people should talk about too is Kyrie is his generosity, because he's done a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't understand. Now, is the damage done when you do something else? Yeah, and it casts a shadow on it. He was his Native American, you know, heritage. He's gone and done a bunch of things for them. He's, you know, the WNBA, when they were on strike that time, he ended up helping out the WNBA girls with money he gave. So there, women,
bought George Floyd a house.
He bought George Floyd's family a house. Yeah. So yeah, you can look at him, and he's been. But I guess that's the thing about Kyrie's all over the place.
Yeah.
And you just can't pinpoint and say, this is who he is. And Kyrie's always said that. Yeah. I'm a complicated dude.
Yeah. It's sad to some degree.
Were you shocked that the Brooklyn Nets balked on the decision to hire Ime Udoka?
No, not considering the whirlwind that's there already. I mean, you already got dog shit on one shoe. You want it on another one?
Seemed like they were down for
what you want. Hey, wait a minute. Let me wipe that one off. Hold on a minute. There's another pile. Let me step into that one.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, and
hey, you see that right there? Don't step right there.
And they talk about culture all the time, the Nets culture, and we got to get back to basketball, and they're potentially adding another distraction to themselves to gain what? Like, well, this guy isn't like a magician who's going to solve everything.
But I think what happened, and the reason I think they pulled back, is they watched the way things happen since Kyrie has been gone, and they watched this team, and they're playing so much better.
Right.
And I think the last 3 or 4 games, they won 3 out of 4 or something like that, and they've been playing really well. Yeah. So if it had continued to go downhill, I think there have been more pressure to bring Ime in. But Jock Bond seems to be doing a really good job. They took the interim off his name and made him the coach. But if they had continued to go downhill, I think they'd have made that move.
See, I think that's part of it. But I think the other part is, can Ime really whip this team into shape with everything that's going on? I mean, listen, everyone knows what he did last year with the Celtics. Everyone knows how he was able to turn that team around and motivate them to reach the finals. This is a tough group of guys to do that with for Ime. I'm not saying he wouldn't be able to pull it off, but with everything, with the reason why he's no longer the coach for the Boston Celtics, going into a situation where he's going to try to appoint people about accountability, who's to say guys like Kevin Durant or Ben Simmons are going to be like, oh, wait a minute. What about you? You didn't even serve your full suspension. You're going to tell me that I need to shoot? Like, what about you?
You know what I mean? Let me go to the black church when the preacher says, he does like this. Do as I say and not as I do. Right?
He would be saying that every single day.
I have been there many times in church with the guy that do as I say and not as I do. And so
that would work for about a month.
So sometimes I just think that, I look at the strength of Ime and the relationships he's formed. And let's talk about this. The relationships he's formed here in Boston still carry a lot of weight. Marcus Smart is still talking about it. Al Horford's still talking about it. Jaylen. So a lot of people are still talking about the relationship that he formed with them. And that is something which is really strong that other people looked at, especially if you got a group of guys over there that don't seem to be as strong mentally. So you bring that guy in who seemed to somewhat be able to bridge that gap between those people already.
Yeah, and the Celtics made the decision to bring him in over the summer with multiple candidates. Like, the way the process went out for the Celtics to hire him is much different than what he was going to be walking into in Brooklyn, where it's like, save us and just throw everything on him. Yeah, so it wasn't going to work. And the line I found interesting in the report is that the Nets maybe don't view themselves as Eastern Conference contenders at this point, given everything that's going on. That's what I go back to what I said at the beginning. I don't think Kyrie's going to play for them at the beginning. So if you're going to bring in this guy to get to Kyrie, and Kyrie's not going to be there, maybe that's not the way to go.
What happens if they start playing well? And they turn it on.
Then Jock Vaughn's gonna look like
because you still have Durant. You still have Durant is probably one of the top players still in the world.
Yeah, and that's why they're not desperate
and the
anymore.
people around him. But I want to see. I haven't really seen or heard anything from Ben Simmons. I think it was back. He was out for a while.
Ben Simmons is not in front of a camera.
Invisible.
You know what I mean, man. The last thing he wants is then, like 5 minutes into the conversation. So Ben, what's up? What's going on with you? Like the conversation is going to change, and he doesn't want to talk about himself.
Who had the idea to trade Jaylen for Ben Simmons? I want to know wherever that guy is.
I thought it was you, Bobby, wasn't it?
Yeah. What a terrible move that would have been looking back on it.
I thought you put yourself on there. Was it Xanis? I guess it was Xanis. I don't know. All right, before we wrap up here, let's talk about the Celtics, right? We got about 4 or 5 minutes on the Celtics. Man, they're looking pretty good, right? Thriving. Offense is at the best we've ever seen it, or we've seen it in quite some time. Best in the NBA, arguably, right? And then we get this news about Malcolm Brogdon, who's, well, first of all, he was unable to finish Wednesday night's game, didn't play in the second half. Where's your level of concern? Let's start with you, Max.
Well, I think that was the one concern that I've always heard about Malcolm Brogdon.
That's what comes with
the fact that
comes with the package,
he's often been injured.
Right.
And I've said this before, and it's really so strange. When this team played Philadelphia, the Celtics played Philadelphia, I was walking down the hall and I was quoting Doc Rivers. And as I walk down the hall, Doc Rivers comes around the corner and hears me. He go, "What?" Yeah. And I was using his line. Doc Rivers always said, "Your best ability is your availability."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things you look at. And he's been, there are a lot of times he's been hurt. Hopefully this is just a strain and it won't anything. But man, are we watching Tatum and Brown just grow to another level? I thought we were seeing Tatum last year had grown into something. But this year, this is what's scary about Tatum. This year, he's a better defender.
Yeah.
He's a much better defender this year.
I wasn't sure if he could become the best player in the league because you look at Giannis, you look at Kevin Durant, you look at Jokic, you see these guys winning MVPs, and they're touching every part of the game. We knew Tatum could score. We knew he could take over games with his shot. But seeing him rebound like he has, defend at the highest level,
blocking
guys
shots
up, blocking shots off the backboard, scoring easily and getting off the ball and scoring from different positions on the floor, I'm a believer. This guy could be the best player in the NBA at this point. And I think we're already seeing him early this season get to that level. So Brogdon or not, Joe Mazzulla, Ime Udoka, he's gonna be there because I think he knows what it takes now getting to the finals. And I've talked to him about this. Like,
Bob's not worried about Brogdon. He's like,
the difference.
It's all about Tatum, man. They don't even need that dude.
The difference he's talked about is that he saw how defenses play him in the playoffs. Now he knows, like at that level, what it's going to take. Regular season, it's just a little bit easier for him now.
But for the most part, you think about it, defense played him hard throughout the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he didn't have easy defense, but he outscored. He just met a guy in Andrew Wiggins who was just as athletic as he was. And I think that kind of turned the corner a little bit. Mm-hmm. He'll have to find a way to beat that guy.
Yeah. If you're gonna get double teams, if you're gonna get taken off the ball, you gotta find other ways to do it. He's screening more. I never used to see him screen. He's passing the ball like a point guard. And those are the guys that impact the game at the highest level. Giannis, LeBron, your former teammate in the 80s. Like you got to be able to make plays. You can't just try to score on your own. These guys who do it all on their own, Luka Doncic, LeBron to some degree, James Harden, I don't think that's a winning style anymore. You got to be able to bring a team together.
Maybe it's not a winning style, but I don't think you could do it over a full season.
An 82 games,
that you control the ball the way they do. The new NBA now is about zipping the ball around. There was one time when Tatum would be dribble, trying to get open. He's much more decisive about getting towards the basket, making a quick move. Jaylen sometimes, same way. But then sometimes Jaylen gets a little squirrely with that handle. That he just want to. And I'm telling you who's really played well this year, and it's going to be understated, has been Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart has been,
What did he tell you on the elevator, Max? Trust the point guard.
He just said, he told me that time, when they start playing well, I said, "You're playing well right now." He looked at me and said, "That's what happens when you put the ball in your damn point guard's hand."
He's been great. Brogdon's been great. And credit to the coach. He's putting the ball in those guys' hands. So Tatum and Brown aren't getting this enormous pressure off the ball. They're getting up the floor and finishing layups in transition. I love this offense. They're number one They look so dynamic. This is a fun team to watch.
Is Hauser still something that we're going to talk about for the remainder of the year or not?
I think so, but we'll pick up that conversation next week or down the road. To answer your question though, this is for real. This isn't a fluke. This isn't like a 1 month thing where he goes off and he starts to dwindle down. Like I think he's a legitimate weapon for this offense, especially for the second unit that's been dying for a guy like this, right?
He's 43% for his life from three. So it's translating, and now 50% in the NBA. It's unreal. One of the best pure shooters I've seen coming up.
And he just looks so confident out there, right? Like he looks like he's been playing NBA for 2-3 seasons.
Can Al keep going the way he's going? Because they did give Al a break the other day.
Yeah, I think that helps. I think that helps.
I think they're going. That's the thing that. And what we're not talking about right now is we haven't talked about Rob Williams.
Yeah.
And Rob Williams is the guy who has to come back in the fold. And I think that.
See how we can do like 7 episodes in one sitting?
Yeah.
Max just goes all over the place.
Let's just shoot it around.
No, it's not a bad thing. It's good.
Well, it looks like you have to bring me back.
I know, especially when we're in person. I feel like it just flows naturally, and we can just be here for hours.
But you think about Rob. Rob is that guy that right now, everybody's like, oh my God, bring Rob back. And we haven't talked about him in a while because the team has been playing well. Now, when they got out-rebounded, they played somebody, the Chicago game. In Chicago, they got out-rebounded by 15 or 16. Yeah. I think people were clamoring at that time because they went up by 15 in Chicago. But then they came back and they won some nice games here. And
that's what happens when Vucevic is playing against the
Celtics. So it's really
happens every time.
It's really cool. You talk about subject matter, and we'll be quick here, but subject matter is also our good buddy Danny Ainge. What's happened to him out there?
That team. I'll be up late night throwing on the league pass.
How funny is the situation, though? How funny is it? He's sitting there like looking at the team. Danny, do you not know the biggest prospect is LeBron James is on deck? You guys are doing this to me right now?
That look that Danny gave, somebody had scored like marketing or something. Danny was like,
we're here talking about Kyrie and in Utah, these weird neon jerseys. They're 9-3. They're scoring 140 points against the Lakers. Kelly Olynyk's making crunch time passes.
Right.
They're so fun to watch.
But they're fun to watch. But someone also said they were young too.
And who's coaching them?
They have a bunch.
No, he's young too.
Yeah, so they have
youngest coach in the NBA.
They have a bunch of young players out there who haven't seen that limelight in a while. And you think about even Marketing, who is out there. He didn't have a lot of mileage on it because people stopped believing him in Chicago. And I talked to Randy Brown. Randy Brown, who was the assistant coach out there in Chicago when he was out there. And he said, oh my God, this kid's going to be unreal. He's, Marketing can do this, he can do that. And then all of a sudden, it just shows you how you can fall out of favor. Kind of like Mac Jones right now. Just fall out of favor. Did I step on your toes? I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Not my toes, but maybe Mac Jones' proverbial toes.
I'm sorry.
Just throw him under the bus.
I was driving up Route 1 and Prince Pizza with the Mac or Zappy sign. That's when I knew we lost our mind.
Wow. Somebody actually put a sign out like that?
Yeah.
On the restaurant.
Wow.
This is a crazy couple of weeks.
Yeah. Tell me you're from the North Shore without telling me you're from the North Shore. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Cedric Maxwell Podcast. Special thanks to Bobby Manning. Thank you for coming through, Bobby. Man, we're gonna do this again. We'll talk sports. We'll talk music. We'll
you know what Bobby just did? What did he keep it on?
Oh, he kept it on the 100.
Yeah, he did. He kept it on the 100. We kept on the 100 like that, man.
That's what we do here. You know what it is, man? You know what it is, man? I just think we make people just feel so comfortable that they don't even realize they're keeping it on 100. I've never heard you just keep it that real. Like that was good. Good stuff, bro.
Yeah, good to be here, guys.
We'll see you guys next week.